Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. Alex, I think you were a few years ahead of me, just to make that clear. So I'm of the younger generation. Well, this is an important project for the country. So I'm going to try in about 10 to 15 minutes to give you a quick update on where things stand. When the task force started work at the end of 2020, we had a status quo of where things were. We've advanced things in the last 15 months. There's still a lot of work to do. And this is a much bigger project than was originally envisaged in 2020. So I'm going to run through where we are. Now, at the end of 2020, we were looking at over 20 possible locations to terminate the pipeline. After a number of months of engagement, the location of Wales was selected, partly because of economics, partly because of the opportunity for large-scale industrial development over time. And we also wanted to be away from the population centers. And selecting the site was the first step to get going on the detailed studies that were needed, more specifically the ESIA, the environmental and social impact, the geotechnical studies, the geophysical studies. So by the end of 2020, that location was picked and the work was ready to start on that. The second key achievement that we had at the end of 2020 was that initially the size of the project was targeting bringing only 30 million cubic feet of gas per day to shore. We were able to push and get that up to 50. And then we also had the issue of how long will this project take? Such a project like this is quite a complex engineering project. And we were talking of coming from a mile deep in the ocean below Lisa 1, Lisa 2, coming 200 kilometers to shore and then onshore. And these projects based on historical precedents generally take many years. But we were able to agree with Exxon an aggressive time frame of end of 2024 to get this completed, with the first 18 months starting at the end of 2020 being used for all of the technical studies. And so at the end of 2020, we had general screening numbers for the cost of the project. We agreed with Exxon that the pipeline will be funded by Exxon out of cost oil. And we agreed that we would go out and procure everything competitively. We were looking at a price landed coming out of the power plant that would represent a price not above 7 cents per kilowatt hour. So this would cover both the cost of the gas, the cost of the pipeline, the O&M cost, and the capital cost of the power plant. And I'll come back more to cost at the end and where this positions us. Now, what have we accomplished since then? The other key issue that we needed to decide was how big is this pipeline going to be? And so we spent a bit of time looking at that. We finally agreed on a 12-inch pipeline with a guaranteed committed capacity of 50 million cubic feet of gas per day, and that's the rich gas. Of course, with 12 inches, we can push a lot more gas through that pipeline. I think at a minimum, we probably could do 120 million cubic feet of gas if we were to fill it. But we were given a commitment of 50 million cubic feet of gas by Exxon. Last year, we also got Exxon also got on the way with the ESIA. And under our laws, the first part of that was getting the terms of reference agreed. So there were public consultations across the country by Exxon, following which the EPA approved the terms of reference, and the work got underway. We expect that by the second quarter of this year, by April, that draft report will be submitted to the EPA. In addition to that, all of the technical studies got underway, and we expect conclusion of what they call FEED, front-end engineering and design, to be completed by the third quarter of this year. We also had to agree the route, the onshore route. We knew where the pipeline was coming onshore, generally on the west coast, not through the river, on the west coast. But we needed to select the route to get the pipeline down to Wales. And so we looked at a number of options, and we selected that route. In July of last year, we issued a EOI, expression of interest, and we basically invited interested parties to comment on what would provide input in our choice of the technology for the power plant, the level of interest in the NGLs, and the level of interest in the value-added production. And we received over 30 expressions of interest, quite significant. A lot of work went into it. In some cases, companies responded to all three of the areas we were looking at: the power plant, the NGL facilities, how they can use the NGLs, and the value added. In all, I think from the 30 companies, we had over 50 plus different areas that they were interested in. And so the responses on the power plant allowed us to make a decision on the type of technology. So we decided that we will go with the combined cycle technology. We also sized the project a bit higher than we were looking at pre-2020. We sized the project to build out in one phase the full 300 megawatt plant with a net delivery of 250 megawatts. Now, to meet that, for the gas to be able to power such a size power plant, it would require over 40 million cubic feet of gas. And given that we were getting 50 million in the rich gas, when we separate the liquids, we would probably have just about 44, 45 MCFD left, which is barely enough to power a 300 megawatt power plant. The project also included the natural gas liquid plant, and we're looking at an initial train of 60 million cubic feet capacity, and that would give us about 3,700 barrels per day. Now, that is a significant quantity for Guyana. Our current demand of LPG is just about 700 barrels per day. So this is over 5 times what is the current capacity or demand of the market. And then finally, at the end of last year, we agreed with Exxon. Exxon proposed that there were synergies from combining the power plant and the NGL plant and doing this as one combined EPC process. And so we went out in a public advertisement in December, inviting firms to be pre-qualified for the construction of both the power plant and the NGL plant as a combined unit. And we received in January over 21 expressions of interest or pre-qual applications. Those are currently being reviewed. So what are the next steps? Well, once the pre-qual process is completed, and we're expecting that to be completed this quarter, the next step would be to issue the RFP. and this may be done in stages with priority for the power plant. Our working timetable is to deliver the rich gas by the end of 2024, and the remaining facilities, the NGL plant, to be online in 2025, by which time we'll be able to deliver dry gas to the power plant. So initially it will start up with the wet gas, but then it will end up with the dry gas, the C1, C2. We're also expecting by the first half of this year that Exxon will complete their, put in the orders for the long lead items. So to get a project like this going, all the piping and everything, you have to put those orders in well in advance of start of work. And we expect that to happen in the first half of this year. The final engineering, as I said, will be completed by the third quarter. And we expect by year end to have all of the commercial agreements and Exxon's final investment decision. So construction will then start end of the year with commercial startup of the power plant using the rich gas by the end of 2024, and the remaining facilities being completed in 25. Now, what's the scope of this project? We're looking at a 225-kilometer pipeline that will be competitively procured in, and Exxon has got a very structured manner in which they go about this. We're looking at the NGL facility that will deliver 3,700 barrels a day. That's the expected capacity. And we're looking at a combined cycle power plant of 300 megawatts. The pipeline is being funded by Exxon out of cost oil. Along the western side, and the power plant and the NGL facility will be located next to each other. And then the power will go from there through substations and transmission lines. As part of this project, the transmission size that GPL currently uses is 69 kV, but because of the increase in the total capacity that we will need, the new transmission voltage will be 230 kV. So in parallel with the power plant, GPL will be rebuilding its transmission system to operate at a 230 kV. Now, the pipeline route from the Stabroek block is the green route that comes in. We followed a route that is similar to where the fiber optic cable is, with some differences. So we were able to piggyback on work that was previously done for the fiber optic cable. The onshore pipeline route comes in at Nova Flanders, then heads a little west, and then generally comes down and terminates in Wales at Hermitage. So you would see the routing is more on the western side. So this is not coming along the river, this is coming along the land. And where it's terminating is south of an area called Free and Easy and north of a place called Marie's Lodge, or what is generally referred to as Wales, but the whole area was the Wales Sugar Estate. Now, as part of this project, it creates the opportunity for significant development. And so there is a committee called the Wales Development Committee that has done a lot of work, and they have zoned all of what previously made up the Wales estate and additional lands. So this is coming from the north where Wales estate was, coming all the way down to almost opposite land of Canaan, roughly 14,000 acres of land. And that has been zoned by the committee to cover every type of use, from residential, commercial, industrial, heavy industrial. So the area that the pipeline is terminating and where the power plant and NGL facility will be heavy industrial. And that will be about 1,400 acres. But there's a lot of other land that will be developed as part of this development. Now, let's put this in context of the economics. Right now, GPL average price for power, the retail price for its customers, its residential customers, its industrial customers, commercial customers, over 200,000 customers, averages about 30 US cents, quite high. The current generation cost, that is the cost of generating power before it leaves the power plant, is about half of that, about 15 cents. This figure may be slightly higher now because oil prices have been rising again. I remember when oil prices peaked about 10 years ago, we were close to $120 a barrel. The generation cost alone was over 20 cents per kilowatt hour. Bear in mind that what we generate is not what we actually collect in billings. We have technical and commercial losses. So this 15 cents, when you gross up for losses, is probably 20 cents. And then you've got your transmission cost, you've got your distribution cost, your commercial cost. And the objective as a result of this and other projects is to reduce the electricity price by at least half. This year in the capital budget, the government committed monies to basically build a power plant. And as a result of this project and the Amila Falls project, which I will speak about tomorrow, we are looking at generation costs dropping to at least half of where we are, which will allow the price to the consumers to come down by at least 50%. And gas, because it's relatively clean, leaves a much lower carbon footprint relative to oil on a per kilowatt hour produced. Now, looking at demand and where Ghana is going and where the country is going and how these projects will meet that. In 2025, GPL is projecting that it will need over 400 megawatts of power. Now, last year, the peak was 135 megawatts. So we're talking of increasing this a couple 100%. The energy load will be in excess of 2,500 gigawatt hours. Is projected to see. So by 2026, our expected energy mix will be the gas, at least 250 megawatts net. The Amila Falls Hydro Project at 165 megawatts, and other renewables such as solar and wind. So as we cater for this significant growth in electricity demand, the 300 megawatt power plant, the Myla Falls and other forms of renewables, all of those will be brought into the equation. And although we will be using a lot more power, our carbon footprint as a result of this per kilowatt hour will be a lot less. Thank you.